Good afternoon. How's the energy? Seems a bit down in the room, or is great? Great? All right, perfect. So here we are with a session on fashion, and more importantly for budding entrepreneurs, or those who've been thinking for a while but never started up. Maybe this is worth the while for the next half an hour, because we have got a great panel here, people with very diverse backgrounds on investments to operating businesses to helping companies acquire, raise capital. So we have a host of panelists here. And my name is Abhishek Ganguly, and I'm an entrepreneur for the last 6 months. Started this company called Agilitas. Been in the sportswear industry for the last 22 years. And I would like all of you to just give a quick intro and perspective, maybe your story in a minute, and then we can get rolling.
Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks for having me. My name is Rahul, Chandra. I've been in the venture world for about 20 plus years. I started a fund called Helion prior to this, which my current fund is called Arkam Ventures. Our main focus is consumers in middle India, which is households which earn family incomes of 5 to 20 lakhs spread across the country. What we focus on is how their buying behavior is changing and what their purchasing priorities are. So that's what we do.
Hi, I'm Shuchi. I'm a principal at Fireside Ventures, leading the fashion, home, kids space. Prior to this, I was an operator myself. Started a brand of jewelry called Pipa Bella in 2013, which I sold to Nykaa in 2020. Worked with Nykaa for a couple of years. Interesting journey to see them from pre-IPO to post-IPO. Was working with their private label business in fashion. And more recently joined Fireside and leading their investments in fashion.
Hey guys, good to meet all of you. My name is Chandrasekhar. Please call me CV. I'm a principal at Matrix Partners. I look at consumer brands, commerce, media, social, and ed tech inside Matrix. Prior to this, I was a two-time founder myself. One was in D2C foods. The other was B2B services. Prior to this, I was also head of Glance Collective, which is a house of brands joint venture between Glance in Mobi, as well as Collective Artist Network, which is a talent management agency you guys must have heard about. We try to do multiple experiments. Some of them revolved around building influencer and celebrity brands, one of which was we launched one with Ekta Kapoor, one with B-Unique, so multiple brands there. That was my short and not so sweet experience with fashion myself. Prior to that, BCG, Food Panda was part of the team that sold the company to Ola, worked for a year at Ola, and then did my sort of startup experiences. Super happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Pankaj Jaju. I've been an investment banker for 30 years. I run Metta Capital now, and been lucky to be involved with fashion industry for over 25 years as an advisor helping companies raise capital or buy and sell businesses. Been the primary banker for almost every large fashion house in India and continue to do that.
Hi guys, I'm Prashanth. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tomorrow House of Brands. We are a tech-led house of brands focusing on new age consumers, new age brands. We've got about 8 brands in our portfolio. Previously, I was also in consulting and also a VC investment partner. So my investing experience has been more in fashion brands at Kalari and also at Facebook, into platforms like Misho, which were also very large in fashion.
Perfect. So we have an operator, we have an investment banker with 30 years of experience in various transactions around fashion, and we have 3 VC firms looking for their thesis and the right thesis already, if not already, invested into fashion companies. So I will start with you, Pankaj. Like, how investable is fashion business for institutional investors? And if you can just, without looking forward, if you can just look backward and say, what has been the best examples and how was that journey of various companies getting, transacted over, you saw from private equity to strategic to VCs. How has that been for the last, let's say, 10 years?
Yeah, so fashion is an extremely complicated business. Like most people sitting here very well know. It's always had the proverbial pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but something or the other keeps happening which, pushes the pot away. And investors love certainty and simplicity in businesses. So if I look at businesses which have really done well in fashion from an investor's perspective and made money, are businesses which have had reasonably high growth, have had predictability in the way they've done the business, have kept working capital low, have had made reasonable amount of money year after year after year, which means not running fast suddenly to accelerate and then fall down, but to do the same things consistently right again and again. And examples of companies which have done well in the last 10 years from a investor perspective and public markets would be, a Manyavar, a Go Color, a Keval Kiran, a Page Industries which runs Jockey. And the common thread across all of them is that they've run the business very conservatively when it comes to inventory. Even though they've been aggressive in the marketplace from a consumer, they've kept the price, reasonable. They've been able to keep their supply chain tight and source at, reasonable cost, and ensured that whatever profit they make converts into cash flow. And hence not just running after a future profit which will happen when we reach a certain size. I think that's the crux in my view.
So if that is the thing, that conservative approach, conserve cash, deployment of capital, affordable pricing, and strong supply chain to support that pricing is what your view of successful fashion ventures has been. Now is that a quite anti to how a venture business would be thinking? And hence, do you have, and I know Fireside has quite a few fashion investments, do you think that's a very antithesis to your investment, that you have been thinking about? And how do you see the next 10 years? Because you guys would be thinking next 10 years, not the.
So I think there's no question of, I think also VCs typically chase large TAMs. I think that's the first starting point for VCs. And of course, there's no doubt on TAM with respect to fashion. I think shape of business is the big question that VCs are beginning to learn today. I think largely VCs in the past have invested in tech, digital first brands. The truth is, a lot of the brands that Pankaj mentioned have largely been non-digital and offline first, I would say, right? So I think VCs are also in that learning process of what it takes to build an largely offline business in the long run. I think in the short run, digital first is a great GTM, but I think in that long run, building offline, VCs are still learning about it. Private equity guys have I think learned that already, right? So VCs are still getting there. I think for us, we at Fireside have looked at businesses and very early on understood that offline is where the game is in fashion. Most successful businesses, if you look at even in today Gen Z fashion, Zudio, Style Union, etc., ultimately have a offline shape of business. So understanding what that means from a supply chain perspective, from how you use data effectively to manage inventory across stores, how you think about team building, real estate planning, all of that is something that we look at very early. Has the founder thinking about that before we make an investment?
So what about you, CV? Like, how as important is offline, as well as how do you see fashion investment thesis next 5 years, 10 years?
I think to her point, yes, a lot of VCs are learning the segment and getting smarter at it, but this time there's genuine interest, and there should be genuine interest. So my the way that I look at it is, if you are a founder and you want to start up in fashion and lifestyle, it's a great time. And I would urge you to start thinking about your idea, put your plan down and see what makes that happen. What's your point of differentiation? Which are the consumer segments you're going after? I'm not just saying this from a short-term perspective. Yes, potentially CACs will be lower in the next couple of years, funding, etc., but also long-term. So I think let's just zoom back a bit. We love to find hockey sticks, right? So if you were to plot a GDP per capita, India's around $2,300 GDP per capita now. At some point, when we cross $4,000 GDP per capita, and we've seen that in China and a lot of these Southeast Asian countries as well, the way that the additional discretionary income is spent is completely different from how the first, whatever, $4,000 gets spent. A lot of that moves into lifestyle, or a lot of them moves into sort of discretionary, more sort of identity signaling sort of spends, creating a more individual lifestyle for yourself, of which obviously fashion plays a big part of it, right? So with such a large sort of macro tailwind, so the only question you're going to ask yourself is, do you believe in the India story in the next 10 years? If you do, it is impossible for the fashion TAM not to create great venture-backed outcomes. So that's from a macro perspective. If you look at an infrastructure perspective, you would say everything from digital payments to just consumers getting ready to pay online, to even, if you remember, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room would remember, just getting vendors to open up a system and update inventory. It used to be a mission, right? Versus right now there are tools that will come in, you'll put those processes in, etc. So the gaps at every point of time you can crunch. You don't have to wait for 6 months to see if the consumer likes your design. Put it up and see what the CACs are, what your ROAS is reflecting. So in all of these constructs, it allows for businesses to scale faster. That being said, nobody's forcing a tech kind of growth mindset on fashion. That's the wrong way to do it. Build the brand first, make sure you don't sit on too much inventory, be careful. But to tell yourself there is no opportunity, or to say that, it's kind of like a gloomy place, how can the next big opportunity come about, would be kind of like saying, yes, there was a point of time it was just Flipkart and Amazon, and then you said no other player can ever come, and then suddenly Meesho came up, right? So we're going to be in that space. Not everything needs to be VC backable, but there will be enough VC backable ideas.
Okay. Coming to you, Rahul. What's your consumer investment thesis once you started the fund, as well as why haven't you invested in fashion yet? Do you plan to invest in fashion?
Thanks, Abhishek. Yeah, that's a fair way to. Yeah. No, absolutely. Haven't opened the account yet. My last investment was in a Meesho-like site where people would come and discover fashion, try it on, and actually it was very early days of the influencer world where people could actually talk about what it goes with what. So I had done my early dabbles. This is during Bunique and Woopler days, if people remember. The bet was at that time that online commerce of fashion is really a great category because of the margins that are built into fashion. So my focus was always more on the distribution side and the adoption side. Over the years, I think especially with the new fund, areas that we believe that are still big value opportunities for fashion, where fashion gives you that revenue pool and the profit pool, that is emerging in India. So when you go out into middle India, what you see are two things. And again, I'm hearing from my panelists as well before this panel, the wardrobe sizes are increasing. What at Bunique's time used to be the kurti only model, now is going into multiple, both men and women. So in terms of the wardrobe set, Indians are going through the Western curve, I believe, where one T-shirt for everything no longer works, one lowers for everything no longer works. So there is customized apparel for different occasions, and I think that really opens up the market. I've lived in the US many years back, but there is a shoe for everything, there's a trouser for everything, there's a T-shirt for everything, and I think that's where even at middle India level, the wardrobe is expanding. The other is, when people like a brand, they want it in every color. So the variations are now moving into, I need this in every color. So again, that's another axis of wardrobe expansion. Third thing that we are seeing is that, lo and behold, in the last 10 years, people are willing to pay a lot more for the same shoe. On an average, what used to be a sub 2,000 rupee category, which is sneakers, is now easily a 3 to 5,000 rupee starting for a decent pair. So I think the ticket size is the average price of the good is, has gone up 3-4x. So overall, we absolutely see the demand or the appetite going up several notches. Where we see gaps really is on, based on our fund thesis, is on supply chains, on category creations. So anything that, the way we see India in general as a manufacturing center is beset by problems of informal, just disorganized supply structures. So if you have people supplying to you, it is a headache, it's a management problem to deal with so many suppliers. Where we see India moving is just formalization of that supply chain. So even in fashion, where we see big opportunity is where people help you aggregate, people help you, not just you, but if you're a foreign buyer, there is an easier way now to discover. If you're a supplier, there is an easier way for you to now find your buyer. So we like those places in the middle which match. Especially you don't know why you should invest in a sample because you don't know if somebody's going to buy it. But if, option A is better than B, then somebody can hold hand and take you to option A instead of wasting money and time on option B. So as a supplier, you're much better placed if these intermediaries come and do a better job. So we like those, and we go back all the way to new chemicals and new threads being looked at more on the deep tech side. That could fundamentally change the way India sources. So that's how far back we go.
Okay. So to you, Prashanth, two questions, two parts. How much capital did you raise to get started? What's your first capital raise?
Well, we are backed by the Aditya Birla Fashion Group. So I think our first sort of capital tranche has been 100 million, but not as a fund, but as an operator. I think we are here to build long-term brands which own categories, get to leadership position. And of course, our TG is not, for us, channel is a means to an end. It's more the consumer TG. 70% of the consumers we solve for are either millennial or Gen Z. And the way we look at it is today's Gen Z is tomorrow's millennial, and today's millennial is tomorrow's consumer, right? So the market's obviously shifting there. Are we building brands which are cool, aspirational, and combining aspiration with pricing that caters to this TG? That's why we're here.
Yeah, so that's quite a decent check to start off. Yeah, and question: House of Brands. Why the thesis of House of Brands? What capabilities are you building at the group level, and what capabilities at the brand level?
Yeah, so I think there are three big pillars, I would say, where capabilities have to be built differently than how traditional brands have built capabilities. The first part of it is, are you building a brand which is a tech-led, data science-led brand? So if you look at all the learnings from a Shein kind of model, can you bring that across categories, irrespective of whether it's fast fashion or slow fashion? I think that's the first pillar, and we've sort of built that team horizontally. Out of about 150 people we have in tomorrow at the holdco level, 50 of them are in tech and data science. So can you actually bring in agility in the way you think about trend spotting, to demand sensing, to how do you think about range, to how do you manage inventory, how do you solve for that consumer differently? That's the first pillar. The second pillar is, even on marketing, I would say, I think on the previous panel, there was a comment on, today you don't need to do consumer research once a quarter. It happens every day on Instagram. I think brand building in a more guerrilla marketing way and breaking out of the clutter is one piece of the puzzle. But even doing performance marketing very differently across all the many channels that you can waste money on is the second pillar. The third pillar is actually more category specific. So going very deep into the back end, into supply chain, building agile, nimble supply chains, working with suppliers in the whole ecosystem. And there again, I go back to the China example of saying Alibaba built the initial supply chain strength, and then Shein got deeper in that. I think India is very early in terms of building that supply chain for a more agile, nimble front end. So that's the third area we're investing. The fourth, of course, is more hygiene, which is more table stakes, which is eventually all brands will be across all channels, whether it's D2C, marketplace, or offline. So are you building an ecosystem of partnerships where the brand founders can actually help scale, whether it's with Myntra, Flipkart, Ajio, Amazon, or whether it's when you get to offline, how do you get to offline the right way? Or going deeper in D2C, in a pure play D2C way. So that's the more hygiene.
So you're giving wings to all these founders who independently will find it difficult or very expensive to...
That's right. In fact, tying it back to the VC question, I think most of our brands are either bootstrapped or were VC funded in their journey from 0 to 100 to 100 to 200. And we believe what is needed to go from 200 to 1,000 is very different to what it took you to get here. And hence, we are investing horizontally in these areas. But our brand founders are with us over the next 4, 5, 6 years to build distinctive brands which are differentiated, but equally horizontally, they don't have to worry about plumbing to capabilities that matter.
Perfect. So for the VCs, there is an exit option when you have built. Well, I come to you, Pankaj, on this. So you said last 10 years, and I'll keep saying this because it's probably deployment of capital, conservative, in your words, working on supply chain affordability, the four thesis that you saw win. How do you see next 5 years? If you were to advise, funds at various sizes on investments in the, why don't you guess what would be the next 5 years on fashion? Let's say this company, this type of a company. You can be specific, you can be very generic.
See, I think you need to bet on a founder or a team that understands that you have to create business for the long run and not somebody who's going to do something to build a valuation. Because when you're doing something to build a valuation, when something goes wrong, you will throw in the towel. So that becomes the core. The second is fashion as a business is extremely complicated. And, for example, most people sitting here, and I see few people in this conference than last year simply because the business has been bad. So probably budgets have been slashed. And there Vineet is laughing, saying ki hamari lagi bhi hai. So reality is these things will happen in fashion because you're dealing with a plethora of SKUs and so many, nuances. And hence the agility of the team to adapt. I think those become core. And then, of course, you have to see if there's a large target audience, which is what Shuchi said, or whether there is an opportunity for someone to grow. Because ultimately, what will create value in India? Today morning, there was a presentation which spoke about consumption going to more than double in the next 10 years, or maybe triple. And that's the opportunity. There will be multiple 100,000, 10,000 crore brands which will be created. Does the person have in him or her to do that? Is the target opportunity large? Is the unit economics of the business thought through and sensible? If those are in place, you would bet on them. Today, people are betting on value fashion. So you said specific or generic, but if you look at what Zudio's done and what some of the other companies which have come up in that space are doing, I think that's one category which is growing. But there will be an opportunity for premium brands as well. And that's probably struggling today. And that may be the opportunity to look at saying these are the people who are creating something premium. It's small today, but imagine what happens when Indians start spending.
Perfect. So what is the long-term thinking and the founding team is critical for you, and what are they exactly solving for, and what's the capabilities? Okay, so I'll come to the three of you, unfortunately, one at a time. Like, if you had to think of investments in fashion, what specific capabilities are you looking at? What space? Is it just the front end? Are you looking at back end? Are you looking at adjacencies? To the consumption story is real. The middle class India story is real. But what does that convert into your individual investment thesis on fashion?
So for us, we look at different capabilities depending on whether it's an India 1 story, India 2 story. I think in India 1, it's more of a premium story anyways from a brand perspective. So there, when we're looking at founders, we're thinking if they're building in for India 1, are they building with a brand first thinking? Then we're also thinking about what is the supply chain moat that this founder has? How are they thinking about GTM? Is it a digital first? Is it an offline first? Because digital first in India 1 is easier because because India 1 is a more mature user base anyways for online transactions. So these are the things we would think of India 1. India 2, it becomes, and actually India 1 also, another thing that's important is to think about, what is that one maybe design variation that you're creating. Because in India 1, what we're seeing is that consumers are willing to pay a premium for brands. So you say your COGS are X, consumers are willing to pay 3X if there's some some really strong design or brand value or some really high aspirational value that you're willing to bring to the table. India too, it's a very value for money game. There we're seeing our founders thinking data. Are they thinking tech? Because it becomes much more complex at an India 2 level, largely because the shape of business becomes more offline in India 2. Largely India 2 consumers are still shopping offline, not online. So does the founder have that tech mentality? Do they have that data mindset of how they can use data, to manage inventory across stores? Do they have a real estate mindset? Are they able to get real estate at cheap prices? Are they able to, again, and then here also, how are they thinking about value for money? X COGS may translate into 2x COGS, right, at an India 2 level. So what is that one thing that you're giving which is adding value and allowing you to charge a premium to say from a Zudio from 10%, right? How are you able to charge 10% premium to a Zudio? What is that one thing that you're giving? That is what is important at an India 2 level. So, so I think different capabilities depending on the kind of shape of ultimate business you're looking at.
Right. Because Fireside has a very strong investment thesis on brands.
Yes.
One specific, one-word answer from you. Other than sportswear, which is given, what is the strongest category thesis that you have in fashion?
The strongest menswear.
Okay, all right. So to Rahul and CV, I'll just do, because we are coming to the end of the session, I'll have a very specific question to both of you. What specifically, if you were to see a pitch right now and you would say, I will forward it to my IC or I'll write a check, what would that be in the business of fashion?
So it'll be a combination. It'll definitely be a founder who's from the fashion industry or has fashion background in some form. I think some of these...
The tech founders will sink if you say that.
It's true. Find a tech co-founder if you need to. But we definitely want to see some experience in that team. I think some of the reimagination can only happen if you can actually see the problem firsthand. So we believe that's an important descriptor of the team. Second is, I'd love to see a pitch where the pitch isn't just talking about the TAM, but also the profit pool. By that, what I mean is, there is something that is going to change the total amount of profit that you can make in a certain space or an idea. That could either be regulation. It could be the government coming and saying, BIS, everything's changed in footwear, things look very different. Same could happen in toys, so that could be one of it. Second one could be consumers are shopping differently, data I get differently, here's Shein, here's Urbanic, here's another way to sell to the customer. But something that you're doing is leading to a profit pool unlock and not just a TAM unlock. It could be on supply chain, it could be on time to market, go to market. But if you don't see that and the pitch is simply, I will do these three things 10% better, it'll add up to create some sort of value for the brand, but it might not be VC investable in our point of view. And it's typically the founders who have been in the industry who can identify some of those profit pools as well. I'm counting you as part of that when you decide to take your plunge and get so deep into the whole footwear space. Again, you've seen the market, you see a why now, you see why there's a clear 10x profit pool unlocking and why the timing is right. So the why now becomes an important part of the decision metric as well.
Rahul, the yet to be investor in the fashion sector. You have to write a check today.
Totally.
What's the pitch you're looking for?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of aspirational categories in Middle India. I think we would love to see units go into multi-million shipped units. But a combination of well-crafted, aspirational product at a price point which blows the socks off the competition. I mean, it's not 20% cheaper, but it's 1/10 of that price. If you can give that well-crafted product in the hands of a middle India customer, I think we'll see a multi-million consumer market emerging. I think there's the whole point is we can create a market which is massive. So I think we'll love that combination.
Perfect. Fashion is growing, India middle class is growing, premiumization is happening, Consumption overall is growing. India middle class growth is leading to consumption. Capability, what moat are you building to win this better than competition? How are you using tech and digital mindset for future growth? How are you deploying capital? What kind of understanding of the category do you come with? How are you unlocking profit, value, and while you keep an eye on TAM? And something that you said is that what is your 10 years, what's the shape of the business you're building? So it's a long-term, to what Pankaj said, it's not short-term value, but what is the long-term business, long-term animal that you're creating as a business? Super important. That's all from our side. Thanks for listening to us.